Mom, is that him?
Who is this child?
The little boy was standing beside Ryu Tae-gyeom's chair when Imani Wekesa realized the secret she had protected for 6 years was about to collapse. Morning sunlight poured through the glass walls of Marevia Living's executive conference room, turning Busan Harbor silver blue behind them. 30 employees had gathered for what should have been a routine leadership briefing. Instead, every face had gone still. Tae-gyeom stared at the 6-year-old, then at Imani, then back at the boy. Kito held a folded paper boat between his small fingers. "Mom," he said quietly, "is that him?" Imani stopped breathing. Tae-gyeom rose slowly from his chair. "Is that who?" Kito looked confused by the fear on his mother's face. "The man from your blue box." Something changed in Tae-gyeom's expression. Imani crossed the room quickly. "Kito, come here." But Tae-gyeom's attention had fallen to the paper boat. "Where did you learn to fold that?" Kito smiled. "My mom." "No." Tae-gyeom's voice dropped. "That fold. The corner underneath." Imani's fingers tightened around her handbag. 7 years earlier, on a bright morning beside the sea, Tae-gyeom had taught her that exact fold. Nobody else had been there. Nobody. Kito turned the boat over. "You mean this?" Tae-gyeom went pale. Imani reached her son. "We're leaving." "Imani." She froze. Tae-gyeom looked at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. Who is this child? 4 hours earlier, Imani had believed losing her job would be the worst thing that happened that day. She had been wrong. If stories about buried love, impossible choices, and truths that refuse to stay hidden keep you watching, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. Because what happened that morning began 7 years earlier, with a message that never reached the man it was meant for. At 8:07 that morning, Imani entered Marevia Living carrying 2 folders and a cup of unsweetened tea. The headquarters gleamed above Busan Harbor, all pale stone, glass, and sunlight. She had worked there for 11 months without once allowing herself to wonder whether returning had been a mistake. Until Tae-gyeom summoned her. He stood beside his office windows when she entered. 39. Controlled. Immaculate. The man she had once loved looked almost exactly as memory had preserved him. Almost closed the door. She did. Tae-gyeom placed a printed document on his desk. "Did you send this?" Imani glanced down. It was confidential correspondence concerning Marevia's upcoming Jeju coastal project. "Yes. Without my approval. You approved the revised terms yesterday morning." "I approved the terms, not their release." Imani looked at him. "The client deadline was 9. You assumed." "I acted according to the authorization attached to the file." His eyes sharpened. "What authorization?" Imani opened her folder. The page was missing. Her stomach tightened. It was there. "It isn't now. I wouldn't send confidential material without written clearance." "Yet you did." For 11 months she had tolerated his distance, his clipped instructions, his refusal to acknowledge that they had once known each other's dreams, but she would not accept being called careless. "If you're accusing me of misconduct, say it clearly." A muscle moved in his jaw. "You're dismissed." Silence. Imani had imagined hearing cruel things from him. Strangely, those 2 words hurt less than she expected. Maybe because Tae-gyeom had already broken something larger 7 years ago. She removed her employee card and placed it on his desk. "You always do this." His expression shifted. "Do what?" "Decide the truth before asking for it." For the first time, the billionaire had no immediate response. Imani turned away. "Imani." Her hand stopped on the door. "What does that mean?" She looked back at the man who believed she had disappeared from his life without explanation. "It means firing me may be the first decision you've made about me that actually reached me directly." His face changed. She left before he could ask why. At 11:42, Imani returned to the executive floor because she'd forgotten Kito's school enrollment envelope inside her desk drawer. Amwikali was supposed to collect him from his morning arts program. Instead, the elevator opened. "Auntie had a bakery emergency," Kito announced cheerfully. Imani stared at him. Behind Kito stood Ari, apologetic. "I had to bring him." Before Imani could answer, Kito spotted the conference room. Through its glass wall sat Tae-gyeom. Kito became strangely still. Then he reached into his little backpack and removed the paper boat his mother had folded for him that morning. His eyes moved from the boat to Tae-gyeom. "Mom?" Imani's heart began pounding. Kito walked toward the conference room. "Kito." He didn't stop. And minutes later, standing beside Tae-gyeom's chair, he asked the question that shattered 7 years of silence. "Mom, is that him?" Now Tae-gyeom stared at her across the sunlit room. Who is this child? Imani took Kito's hand. My son. Tae-gyeom's eyes dropped to their joined fingers. Then Kito looked up at him and casually rubbed his left thumb twice across the side of his index finger. Tae-gyeom stopped breathing. Across the table, Ryu Sun-ok slowly rose. She had watched Tae-gyeom make that exact nervous gesture since he was 4 years old. Her gaze moved from her grandson to Kito, then to Imani. Tae-gyeom, she whispered. He couldn't answer. Sun-ok eyes filled with dawning disbelief. That boy. Imani pulled Kito closer. Sun-ok finished the sentence. He moves exactly like you. Sun-ok's words seemed to remain suspended inside the conference room, long after she spoke them. Imani felt Kito's small hand tighten around hers. Tae-gyeom did not look at his grandmother. His attention remained fixed on the boy. Palmioni, he said quietly. That's enough. I only said what I saw. Sun-ok studied Imani now, and the warmth normally present in the elderly woman's face had been replaced by questions. Imani lowered herself beside Kito. We're going home. Did I do something wrong? Kito whispered. The question pierced her. No, nothing. She kissed his forehead. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Tae-gyeom stepped forward. Imani, wait. She stood. You fired me this morning. There's nothing left to discuss. There is now. Not in front of my son. The emphasis stopped him. Imani took Kito toward the doors. Ari followed immediately. But Kito looked over his shoulder before leaving. Tae-gyeom was still watching him. Their eyes met for barely 2 seconds. Then Kito smiled politely and bowed his head. Tae-gyeom's chest tightened for a reason he couldn't explain. By 12:20, sunlight filled Muikali's bakery, near Busan's waterfront. The room smelled of cardamom bread, coconut buns, and fresh coffee. Imani sat at a corner table, while Kito drew boats with colored pencils. Muikali placed a plate beside her niece. Eat. I'm not hungry. Fear doesn't become smaller because you starve beside it. Imani looked toward Kito. He saw him. Muikali's hands stopped. Tae-gyeom? Imani nodded. And his grandmother saw Kito. Muikali slowly sat opposite her. What happened? Kito asked if Tae-gyeom was the man from my blue box. Muikali closed her eyes. Imani. I know. Why does he even know about that box? He found it last month. I told him the photographs were from before he was born. And the paper boat? Imani looked down. I taught him. Muikali sighed. You kept too many pieces of that man while pretending you'd forgotten him. Before Imani could respond, the bakery door opened. Sun Zaek entered alone. Imani immediately stood. Mrs. Ryu? Please sit. Sun-ok's gaze found Kito. I came for bread. Muikali folded her arms. From a bakery you've never visited? Sun-ok almost smiled. Then perhaps I came because I'm 72 and no longer enjoy pretending curiosity is a character flaw. Imani remained guarded. Sun-ok approached Kito's table. May I sit? Kito nodded. I'm drawing the harbor. You're very good. My cousin Ari teaches me. Sun-ok noticed 3 boats on the page. Each had a tiny star drawn beneath its left corner. Her smile disappeared. Why the stars? They're lucky. Who told you that? Mom? Sun-ok looked sharply at Imani. Tae-gyeom had drawn tiny stars beneath everything as a child. School books, birthday cards, even the ceramic bowls he made in Sun-ok's studio. Imani had once teased him about it. Excuse me, Sun-ok murmured. She stood and walked toward the counter. How old is Kito? Imani's body stiffened. 6. His birthday, Mrs. Ryu. I'm not accusing you of anything. Sun-ok's voice softened. But this morning I watched that child make Tae-gyeom's nervous gesture. Now I've seen another habit. Children share habits. Of course. Sun-ok's looked back at Kito. Sometimes coincidences simply arrive in groups. The bakery door opened again. This time Tae-gyeom entered. Imani's face hardened. Did you follow her? No. Tae-gyeom looked irritated. My grandmother stopped answering her phone. Sun-ok calmly picked up a coconut bun. As you can see, I've survived. Tae-gyeom turned to leave, but Kito suddenly called, Mister. Tae-gyeom stopped. Kito held up his drawing. Do you want to see? After a hesitation, Tae-gyeom walked over. That's Gwangan Bridge. Yes. Your proportions are good. Kito beamed. I want to design buildings when I'm big. Something flickered across Tae-gyeom's face. Why buildings? Kito shrugged. Because houses shouldn't make people feel lonely. Tae-gyeom stared at him. Years earlier, when Imani had asked why he wanted to build homes instead of following his family into finance, Tae-gyeom had answered almost exactly the same way. A home should never make someone feel alone. Imani saw recognition strike him. Kito, she said quickly. Pack your pencils. Tae-gyeom looked at her. How old is he? Don't. Imani, I said don't. Kito glanced between them. I'm 6. I'll be 7 on October 3rd. Tae-gyeom became completely still. Imani's face lost its color. October 3rd. His eyes moved slowly toward her. 7 years ago, the last morning Tae-gyeom and Imani had spent together had been January 7th. He calculated once, then again. His voice was barely audible when he finally spoke. Imani, who is Kito's father? The bakery seemed to lose every sound except the soft hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Imani looked at Tae-gyeom, then at Kito, whose colored pencil had stopped above his drawing. Not here. Then where? Tae-gyeom asked. Nowhere while my son is listening. Kito frowned. Mom? Imani immediately softened. Finish your bridge for me. Wekali understood. She came around the counter and held out her hand. Come help me decide which buns deserve extra coconut. Kito brightened and followed her. The moment he disappeared into the kitchen, Tae-gyeom stepped closer. October 3rd. A birthday isn't evidence. I didn't say it was. Your face did. Sunoke watched them silently. Tae-gyeom lowered his voice. Tell me I'm wrong. Imani's eyes burned. 7 years of pain rose behind her ribs, but she refused to let it become tears. You don't get to walk into my life, count months, and demand answers. I didn't walk into your life. You returned to my company because I needed work. Knowing I owned it, knowing you owned hundreds of companies, and rarely visited this division. That answer hurt more than he expected. So you were avoiding me. I was surviving you. Tae-gyeom went silent. Imani collected her handbag. Leave. Imani, you already decided I was guilty this morning, without checking whether the authorization existed. 7 years ago, you made another decision without asking me anything. I'm not letting you do it again. Tae-gyeom's expression hardened with confusion. What decision? Imani stared at him. For one dangerous second, she almost told him everything. Then Kito laughed inside the kitchen, and she remembered exactly who would carry the consequences. Go. Tae-gyeom left with Sunoka, but the question followed him back to Marevia. At 2:10 that afternoon, sunlight stretched across his office floor, while the Jeju correspondence lay untouched on his desk. He opened an old calendar archive. January 7th. 7 years earlier. He remembered that morning too clearly. Imani barefoot on the balcony of his coastal apartment, laughing because his paper boat had collapsed inside her coffee cup. He had kissed her before leaving for an emergency succession meeting in Singapore. 3 days later, she stopped answering. A week later, her apartment was empty. By February, Marevia's personnel office informed him that she had resigned and requested no further contact. He had believed her silence was an answer. Now one sentence wouldn't leave him alone. It may be the first decision you've made about me that actually reached me directly. Tae-gyeom pressed the intercom. Send Jun Tae-rim to me. His governance advisor arrived 12 minutes later. I need archived personnel correspondence from 7 years ago. Tae-rim adjusted his glasses. Whose? Imani Wekesa. Tae-rim paused. Your former executive coordinator? Tae-gyeom looked up. You remember her? I remember the resignation. It caused problems because it happened during your Singapore transition. Find everything. By 3:35, Tae-rim returned with a tablet and an uncomfortable expression. There's a problem. He placed the screen before Tae-gyeom. Her resignation exists in the personnel register, but the original submission doesn't. Meaning, there should be an email, signed letter, scanned form, something. There isn't. Tae-gyeom stared at the screen. Could records have been lost? Possibly. Except 3 days after her resignation, someone entered a restricted communication instruction under your executive authority. Tae-gyeom's eyes narrowed. What instruction? Tae-gyeom opened the entry. Do not forward personal correspondence. From former employee Imani Wekesa to Chairman Ryu, return all communications through executive administration. Tae-gyeom read it twice. I never ordered this. The system says your office did. Who entered it? The authorization code belonged to the vice chairman's office. Tae-gyeom's stomach tightened. 7 years ago, only one person had controlled that office. His uncle, Ryu Dong-hwan. Get back ye soul, Tae-gyeom said. The archivist? Today. Tae-rim hesitated. What are we looking for? Tae-gyeom turned toward the harbor. For 7 years he had believed Imani vanished, because loving him had become inconvenient. But if someone had blocked her correspondence, then perhaps she hadn't disappeared at all. Something I should have received. At 4:18, Baek Ye-sol entered, carrying an archive drive. Chairman, I found an anomaly before Mr. Jun called me. She opened a scanned mail ledger. One entry had been partially deleted but restored during digitization. Tae-gyeom leaned closer. Sender, Imani Wekesa. Recipient, Ryu Tae-gyeom. Delivery type, personal, urgent. Date, January 29th. Attached item, handwritten letter and medical document. Status, intercepted, returned. Tae-gyeom's fingers went cold. Medical document? Ye-sol nodded. There's more. She enlarged the final line. The return was authorized before the envelope ever reached your office. Tae-gyeom looked at the date again. January 29. Barely 3 weeks after the last morning he spent with Imani. Can you recover the letter? Maybe. Ye-sol's expression changed. But Chairman, according to this ledger, she didn't send one letter. Tae-gyeom looked up. How many? 5. 5? Tae-gyeom stared at Baek Ye-sol, as though the number belonged to a language he no longer understood. Afternoon sunlight covered the archive table between them. Ye-sol rotated her tablet toward him. January 29th, February 2nd, February 9th, February 23rd, March 11th. 5 dates, 5 attempts, 5 pieces of a past Tae-gyeom had spent 7 years believing did not exist. Where are they? 4 were marked returned. The 5th was scanned before processing. Tae-gyeom stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. You have it. Part of it. Ye-sol opened a damaged file. A handwritten page appeared, faded and incomplete. Most of the lower half was corrupted, but several lines remained readable. Tae-gyeom recognized Imani's handwriting immediately. Tae-gyeom, I don't understand why you won't speak to me. I received the message from your office. If those words truly came from you, I will respect your decision. But there is something you deserve to know before I leave. His throat tightened. The next lines were missing. Then one final sentence appeared near the bottom. I cannot make this choice for both of us. Tae-gyeom stopped reading. What message? Ye-gyeom shook her head. Nothing matching that description is in the archive. Jun Tae-rim spoke from beside the window. Then someone contacted her pretending to speak for Chairman Ryu. Tae-gyeom looked at him and intercepted her response. Nobody needed to say the implication aloud. At 9:15 the next morning, Tae-gyeom entered his uncle's sunlit private lounge overlooking the marina. Ryu Dong-won was reading financial reports beside an untouched breakfast tray. You should call before arriving. Did Imani Wekesa send me 5 letters 7 years ago? Dong-won's hand paused over his coffee. Barely a second. But Tae-gyeom saw it. That's an unusual question after 7 years. It's a simple one. Dong-hwan removed his glasses. I handled thousands of executive communications. My personal communications weren't yours to handle. During the succession crisis, everything affecting you became company business. Tae-gyeom placed the recovered ledger on the table. Dong-hwan glanced at it without touching it. You intercepted them. That document doesn't say I personally intercepted anything. Your authorization code does. Dong-hwan leaned back. Be careful about turning incomplete archives into memories. Tae-gyeom's voice became quieter. What did you send her? For the first time, his uncle's composure weakened. Ask her. I'm asking you. Dong-hwan stood. And I'm telling you that 7 years ago, you were 20 votes away from losing control of the company your father built. Everyone around you made difficult decisions. Tae-gyeom's eyes hardened. What did you send her? Dong-hwan walked toward the windows. Sometimes protecting a future requires closing a door. Tae-gyeom felt something inside him drop. Not because it was a confession, because it was close enough. He left without another word. At 10:40, Imani was helping Wakali arrange pastries beneath the bakery's front display when Tae-gyeom entered. Morning sunlight followed him through the door. Imani saw his face and immediately knew something had changed. Muikali, she said softly. Could you give us a minute? Her aunt hesitated before disappearing into the kitchen. Tae-gyeom placed a printed copy of the damaged letter on the counter. Imani looked down. The color drained from her face. Where did you get this? My company archive. Her fingers trembled above the page but didn't touch it. You read it? What remains? She looked away. You weren't supposed to have it. I was supposed to have it 7 years ago. Imani's eyes snapped back to his. I sent 5. I know. Silence filled the bakery. Tae-gyeom swallowed. I never received them. Imani gave a small, broken laugh. Don't. I'm telling you the truth. 7 years later? I didn't know. You expect that to fix something? No. His answer stopped her. Tae-gyeom moved no closer. I expect it to destroy something. Because if you sent those letters, then everything I believed about you was wrong. Imani finally touched the recovered page. Her eyes settled on her younger self's handwriting. Not everything. What was the medical document? Her hand froze. Tae-gyeom saw it. Imani, you need to leave. Was it about Kito? She closed her eyes. Please. His voice cracked for the first time. Were you trying to tell me you were pregnant? Imani opened her eyes. There were tears in them now, but her voice remained steady. Yes. Tae-gyeom seemed to forget how to breathe. She continued before he could speak. But that wasn't the first thing I tried to tell you. What was? Imani stared at him across the counter. That I loved you enough to disappear because I believed you had asked me to. Tae-gyeom shook his head. I never asked you to leave. Your message did. What message? Imani walked into the bakery office and returned carrying a small blue box. She opened it and removed a cream-colored envelope she had kept for 7 years. She placed it between them. Tae-gyeom recognized the embossed seal immediately. It was his private stationery, and beneath the final sentence was something even worse. His signature. Tae-gyeom stared at his signature beneath words he had never written. The bakery was filled with late-morning sunlight, but he felt strangely cold. Imani stood across from him, one hand resting beside the blue box. "Read it," she said. He lifted the letter. The language was formal, controlled, almost cruel. It said their relationship had been a mistake, that his responsibilities made a future together impossible, and that any personal matter between them should be handled through his executive office. The final line struck hardest. "Please do not contact me directly again." Tae-gyeom lowered the page. "I didn't write this." Imani's expression barely moved. "I know that now." "You know?" "Because the man standing here looks horrified." Her voice softened painfully. "The man I knew 7 years ago would have looked the same." Tae-gyeom examined the signature. "Why didn't you question it?" Imani laughed once, without humor. "I did. 5 times. The answer silenced him. She removed another item from the box. A photograph of a pregnancy test beside a clinic appointment card. "I found out 11 days after you left for Singapore." Tae-gyeom stared at the photograph. 11 days. I called. Your number had changed to executive screening. I emailed. Nothing. Then this arrived. She touched the forged letter. I still didn't believe it. So I wrote to you. The 5 letters. The first asked whether the message was truly yours. The second told you I was pregnant. Tae-gyeom closed his eyes. The third, I begged you to speak to me for 5 minutes. His jaw tightened. And the others? By the 5th, I wasn't begging anymore. She looked directly at him. I told you I would raise my child somewhere he would never feel like an inconvenience. Tae-gyeom turned away. Outside, pedestrians moved along the bright waterfront as if his entire history had not just changed. I thought you abandoned me. Imani's eyes filled. And I thought you abandoned us. Neither spoke. 7 years of resentment stood between them, suddenly stripped of certainty. Tae-gyeom finally asked, why return to Moravia? Wekesa needed surgery last year. The bakery was struggling. I needed stable work with good insurance. Why my company? I applied to the Coastal Correspondence Division. Your name wasn't on the recruitment documents. And when you discovered, I almost resigned. Why didn't you? Imani looked toward the kitchen. Because Kito needed stability more than I needed comfort. That sentence landed where accusation could not. Tae-gyeom placed the forged letter carefully on the counter. Let me have this examined. Imani immediately covered it with her hand. No. It may prove who did this. It's mine. Imani, for 7 years, that letter was the reason I learned to stop waiting for you. You don't get to take it because you're finally ready for answers. Tae-gyeom nodded slowly. Then keep it. I'll investigate without it. She hadn't expected him to surrender so easily. You're not going to demand a DNA test? His eyes lifted to hers. I want the truth. But Kito isn't evidence. He's a child. Something inside Imani shifted. Only slightly, but enough to frighten her. Tae-gyeom continued. If there's even a possibility he's my son, I won't turn his life into an investigation without your consent. Imani looked away. From the kitchen came Kito's laughter. Tae-gyeom listened to it with an expression she couldn't bear to study. Does he know anything about me? Only that there was once someone important to me. The blue box. She nodded. Does he know his father's Korean? Yes. Has he asked where his father is? Imani's silence answered. Tae-gyeom's voice became almost a whisper. What did you tell him? That his father and I lost each other. Tae-gyeom looked down. Maybe that was the first true thing either of us understood. At that moment, Kito emerged, carrying a tray with Wekesa. He spotted Tae-gyeom and smiled. You're still here. Tae-gyeom managed to smile back. Apparently. Kito placed a coconut bun before him. This one's free because you look sad. Tae-gyeom stared at the bun. Imani turned away before he could see her face break. If you believe a child should never have to carry the consequences of decisions adults made before he was born, comment truth below, because the truth had finally begun moving forward, but it was moving towards someone who had spent 7 years making sure it stayed buried. Across Busan, Ryu Tae-gyeom stood inside his study holding his phone. The archive was accessed, he said quietly. A woman's voice answered. Then he'll find the rest. Tae-gyeom's face tightened. Not if the final record is gone. It's too late for that. He went still. Why? The woman hesitated. Because I kept a copy. Ryu Tae-gyeom gripped the phone tighter. Morning light stretched across his study desk. Where is it? Safe. The woman answered without hesitation. You told me we were protecting Tae-gyeom. You never told me the woman was pregnant. Dong Hwan's expression hardened. We are not discussing this by telephone. After 7 years, you don't decide how I speak about it. The call ended. Dong Hwan stared at the screen. For the first time since Tae-gyeom had confronted him, genuine worry crossed his face. At Marevia headquarters, Baek Ye-sol was already waiting when Tae-gyeom arrived. Jun Tae-rim stood beside her with 3 restored files displayed across the conference screen. We traced the forged letters document code, Ye-sol said. It originated from executive administration. Tae-gyeom removed his jacket. My uncle's office? Not directly. She enlarged a record. The document was created using the credentials of a temporary executive secretary named Moon Hae-jin. Tae-gyeom frowned. Where is she now? We haven't found her, Tae-gyeom answered. She left Marevia 7 years ago, 6 weeks after Imani. Find her. We're trying. Ye-sol hesitated. There's something else. Your uncle accessed the archived correspondence yesterday. Tae-gyeom looked at her. After I confronted him? 43 minutes afterward. What did he open? The same January records we're investigating. Tae-gyeom's jaw tightened. The mystery was no longer whether someone had interfered. The question was how many people had helped. At 10:30, he left Marevia for his grandmother's ceramic studio. Sunoke had requested his help moving several pieces for an afternoon exhibition. When Tae-gyeom entered, however, he found Kito sitting at a long wooden table covered in clay. Imani stood nearby. Tae-gyeom stopped. What is he doing here? Imani's expression immediately cooled. Your grandmother invited Mwikali's bakery to supply the exhibition. Kito came with us. Sunokok emerged carrying 2 ceramic cups. And because I invited him to make something, Kito proudly lifted a crooked clay building. It's a hotel. Tae-gyeom approached despite himself. Hotels need entrances. Kito pointed to a tiny opening. There. That's a window. It can be both. Tae-gyeom almost smiled. That's terrible architecture. It's creative architecture. Imani watched the exchange, fighting an emotion she had spent years refusing to imagine. Kito suddenly pushed a second lump of clay toward Tae-gyeom. Make one. I have a meeting. You said houses shouldn't make people lonely. Tae-gyeom froze. Who told you I said that? Kito blinked. Nobody. You said something like it yesterday. No. Kito shook his head. I already knew it. Imani stepped forward. Kito? The boy looked confused by everyone's attention. Mom says it. Tae-gyeom turned toward her. You remembered that? Imani's face softened despite herself. Some things are difficult to forget. Kito began shaping his clay again. Then he hummed quietly. 4 notes. Pause. 4 notes again. Sunok dropped the spoon she was holding. It struck the table with a sharp clink. Where did you learn that? Kito stopped humming. Learn what? That tune. Mom sings it when she makes pancakes. Sunoko looked at Imani. That isn't a song. Imani frowned. What? Sunok sat slowly. Tae-gyeom's father made up those notes when Tae-gyeom was a baby. He hummed them every morning while carrying him through the house. Tae-gyeom stared at his grandmother. I don't remember that. You wouldn't. You were 2. Sunoke looked at Imani. But years later, Tae-gyeom started humming it again, without realizing where it came from. Imani's eyes widened. She remembered Tae-gyeom humming those notes while making breakfast, 7 years earlier. She had learned them from him without ever knowing their origin. Kito had learned them from her. 3 generations connected by 4 meaningless notes. Tae-gyeom looked at Kito, and something defensive inside him finally gave way. He walked outside onto the bright terrace. Imani followed several seconds later. Tae-gyeom. He faced the harbor. I need to ask you once. Not as chairman. Not as the man who fired you. His voice shook. As someone who has already lost 6 years, he may never get back. Imani knew the question before he turned around. Is Kito my son? She stared at him for a long moment. There was nowhere left to hide without making Kito pay for her fear. Yes. Tae-gyeom's eyes closed. His shoulders lowered as though the answer had physically struck him. When he opened them, they were wet. Does he know? No. Then don't tell him yet. Imani stared at him, stunned. Tae-gyeom wiped his face quickly. Not until we know how to tell him without making him think his entire life was a lie. Before Imani could answer, his phone rang. Yes, all. He answered. Chairman, we found Moon Hae-jin. Tae-gyeom looked at Imani. Where? Yesol's next words changed his expression completely. You don't need to find her. She's already in Busan. And she says she has the original record proving who ordered Imani's letters intercepted. Tae-gyeom's eyes remained on Imani as Ye-sol spoke through the phone. Where is she? At Marevia. She refused to give me the file until you arrive. Tae-gyeom ended the call and looked through the studio window. Kito was laughing as Sunok and Rupair attempted to repair the crooked roof of his clay hotel. His son. The words felt enormous. Go, Imani said. You need that record. Come with me. Why? Because whatever is inside concerns you more than anyone. Imani looked at Kito. I won't drag him into this. He can stay with my grandmother. The word Mai sounded different now. Sunokuk was Kito's great-grandmother. Tae-gyeom wondered how many ordinary words would change before the day ended. 40 minutes later, Tae-gyeom and Imani entered Moravia's archive room. Baek Ye-sol stood beside a woman in her early 40s. Moon Hae-jin, Ye-sol introduced. Hae-jin bowed slightly toward Imani. I've wanted to apologize to you for 7 years. Imani stopped. You sent the letter. I prepared it. Hae-jin's eyes lowered. But I didn't write the instructions. Tae-gyeom stepped forward. Who did? Hae-jin opened a folder. Your uncle. She removed a printed authorization sheet bearing Donghwan's handwritten initials. He told me Imani had become emotionally unstable after your relationship ended. He said you had requested no direct contact while negotiating control of Marevia. Imani's face tightened. And you believed him. I was 26, temporary staff. He was vice chairman. Hae-jin swallowed. I believed refusing him would end my career. So you forged Tae-gyeom's signature. His signature template was stored in executive administration. I inserted it. Tae-gyeom stared at the document. And her letters? I was ordered to return them. All 5? Hae-jin shook her head. 4. Silence followed. Tae-gyeom looked up. What happened to the 5th? I opened it. Imani's breath caught. Hae-jin's eyes filled with shame. I know I had no right, but by then I knew something was wrong. I saw the clinic document. That's when I learned you were pregnant. What did you do? Imani whispered. I took the letter to Vice Chairman Ryu myself. I told him Tae-gyeom needed to know. Tae-gyeom's voice hardened. What did he say? Hae-jin looked directly at him. He said, a child will make him choose her. The room went completely still. Then, he took the letter. And you let him? Tae-gyeom asked. Hae-jin nodded, tears forming. Yes, that's what I've regretted every year since. She pushed the original record toward him. But before I gave it to him, I copied everything. Tae-gyeom looked down. There it was. Imani's pregnancy confirmation, the correspondence record, and Donghwan's written instruction to prevent delivery. Proof, not suspicion. Imani turned away, pressing her fingers against her mouth. Tae-gyeom approached but stopped before touching her. I'm sorry. She looked back. You didn't write the letter. No, but I created a life where someone could remove you from it, and I wouldn't notice quickly enough. That admission broke through something her anger had protected. I hated you, she whispered. I know. Some mornings I would look at Kito and hate myself, because he smiled like you. Tae-gyeom's eyes filled. You should have been able to hate me to my face. Imani gave a tearful laugh. That's a strange apology. It's the only honest one I have. Later that afternoon, they returned to Sunok's studio. Kito ran toward Imani carrying his finished clay hotel. Look. She hugged him longer than usual. Kito pulled back. Mom, are you crying? A little. Why? Imani looked at Tae-gyeom. This time, he did not interfere. The choice belonged to her. She knelt. Remember when you asked why your father wasn't with us? Kito nodded slowly. Tae-gyeom's hands trembled at his sides. I told you we lost each other. Yes. We found each other. Kito's eyes moved toward Tae-gyeom. The boy became very quiet. Him? Imani nodded. Kito stared at Tae-gyeom for several seconds. You're my dad? Tae-gyeom lowered himself to Kito's height. Yes. Kito didn't run into his arms. He didn't smile. He asked the question no adult in the room expected. Then why didn't you come find me? Tae-gyeom's face crumpled. Because I didn't know you were there. Kito thought about that. Do you wish you knew? Tae-gyeom's answer came immediately. Every day I missed. Kito looked down at his clay hotel. Then he broke it carefully into 2 uneven pieces and handed one half to Tae-gyeom. You can keep this part until I know you better. Tae-gyeom accepted it with shaking hands. His phone vibrated. A message from Donghwan appeared. Before you judge me, ask your grandmother what she knew. Tae-gyeom slowly raised his eyes toward Sunok. She had seen the message over his shoulder, and the sudden guilt on her face told him his uncle had just opened another door. Tae-gyeom looked at Sunok until the warmth of the ceramic studio seemed to disappear around them. What did you know? Sunok lowered her eyes. Kito stood between Imani and Tae-gyeom, holding the remaining half of his clay hotel, unaware that another part of his family's past had just opened. Imani touched his shoulder. Kito, go show Ari where you put the windows. Ari understood immediately and led him toward the garden terrace. Only when the glass door closed did Tae-gyeom speak again. Grandmother. Sunok sat slowly. I knew there was a woman. Tae-gyeom's jaw tightened. Imani? I didn't know her name then. What exactly did Donghwan tell you? Sunok folded her hands. He came to me while you were in Singapore. He said you were distracted by a relationship and that the board intended to use it to question your judgment. And? He asked whether I believed you should abandon everything your father built. Tae-gyeom stared at her. What did you tell him? Her voice weakened. I told him to protect your future. Imani became still. Tae-gyeom's expression changed from anger to disbelief. Did you tell him to remove her from my life? No. Sunoko looked up quickly. Never. I thought he meant keeping the relationship away from the board until the succession vote ended. I didn't know about forged letters. I didn't know about the pregnancy. I didn't know he stopped her correspondence. But you gave him permission to interfere. Sunoko's eyes filled. Yes. Tae-gyeom turned away. Sunok whispered, I thought I was protecting you. Everyone keeps saying that. He looked back at her. Nobody asked what I wanted. Imani's breath caught because the words belonged to her too. For 7 years, other people had made choices around both of them and called those choices protection. Call Donghwan, she said. Tae-gyeom looked at her. Not tomorrow. Not through lawyers. Today. At 1:30 that afternoon, Donghwan arrived at Morevia's private garden atrium. Sunlight fell through the high glass ceiling onto citrus trees and pale stone. Tae-gyeom, Imani, Sunok, Tae-rim, and Hae-jin were waiting. Donghwan saw Hae-jin and understood immediately. So that's where the copy went. Tae-gyeom placed the authorization record on the table. Tell her why. Donghwan looked at Imani. The company was unstable. Tae-gyeom's succession depended on directors who already believed he was too young and emotionally impulsive. Imani's voice remained calm. So you decided I was disposable. I decided the relationship was dangerous. You knew I was pregnant, she said. Donghwan hesitated. Eventually, Tae-gyeom stepped closer. And you still kept her letter from me. Because once you knew, you would have abandoned the succession. You don't know that. I knew you. No. Tae-gyeom's voice broke. You controlled me. Donghwan finally showed emotion. Your father spent his life building Moravia, and I spent 6 years not knowing my son. That ended the argument. Donghwan looked away. Tae-gyeom continued, quieter now. You didn't save my future. You chose which future I was allowed to have. Sunoko covered her mouth as tears fell. Donghwan looked toward Imani. I cannot return those years. No, she said. You can't. Then what do you want from me? Imani considered him. Nothing. He looked surprised. Nothing? My healing will not depend on your punishment. Her voice remained steady. But you will tell the truth. To the board, to the company governance committee, and to every person whose record you manipulated to protect your decision. Donghwan's face tightened. Tae-rim placed a resignation document before him. Your honorary board position will also end today. Donghwan looked at Tae-gyeom. You're choosing her over family. Tae-gyeom shook his head. That's the mistake you still don't understand. Imani and Kito are my family too. Hours later, the confrontation was over. But another quieter one waited at the bakery. Imani found Tae-gyeom sitting alone beside the window, while Kito helped Mwikali arrange morning orders for the next day. You don't have to stay, she said. I know. Then why are you here? Tae-gyeom watched Kito carefully place labels on pastry boxes. Because leaving is what everyone expects me to do. Imani sat opposite him. Knowing he's your son doesn't mean we're suddenly a family. I know. And discovering what happened doesn't erase what happened between us. I know that too. She studied him. Then what do you want? Tae-gyeom looked at her, stripped of the certainty that once defined him. Tomorrow morning, she frowned. What? Give me tomorrow morning. Breakfast with Kito. Nothing else. Imani looked toward her son. Kito was watching them. When their eyes met, he quickly pretended to be fascinated by a pastry box. Imani almost smiled. One breakfast. Tae-gyeom nodded. 1. Kito suddenly approached and placed something on the table. The second half of the clay hotel. Tae-gyeom looked at him. I thought I was keeping only one half. You are. Kito pointed at the new piece. That's Mom's half. Then he looked between them with unsettling 6-year-old seriousness. Mine is still at Grandma Sunocake's. Imani's eyes widened. Kito smiled. You don't get the whole hotel just because you found us. Tae-gyeom looked at Imani. For the first time in 7 years, she laughed with him, instead of because of something he had lost. But when the laughter faded, Tae-gyeom noticed the blue box beneath Imani's arm. Tomorrow would not only be his first breakfast with his son. Imani had finally decided to show him the one thing inside that box she had never sent. The letter she wrote after Kito was born. At 8:12 the next morning, Tae-gyeom arrived at Mwikali's bakery, carrying nothing but himself. No driver waited outside. No assistant followed him. No expensive gift sat beneath his arm. Imani noticed immediately. You're early. I didn't want Kito waiting for me. Something softened in her expression, though she quickly looked away. Sunlight streamed through the bakery windows as Kito appeared carrying 3 plates. You can sit there, he told Tae-gyeom, pointing to the chair opposite him. Tae-gyeom obeyed. Mwikali brought pancakes, fruit, and tea, before disappearing toward the counter with a suspicious smile. Kito poured too much syrup over his pancakes. Tae-gyeom watched him. That's excessive. Kito looked up. It's breakfast. That doesn't explain anything. Mom says mornings forgive bad decisions. Tae-gyeom glanced at Imani. Does she? Usually I'm talking about burnt bread. Imani smiled. For several minutes, nothing extraordinary happened. Kito talked about school. Tae-gyeom asked about his drawings. Kito asked whether billionaires had homework. Tae-gyeom said they had meetings, which were worse. Kito considered this seriously before offering him half a strawberry in sympathy. And somehow, that ordinary breakfast hurt Tae-gyeom more than every revelation of the previous days. He had missed first words, first steps, first school mornings, lost teeth, birthdays, and hundreds of breakfasts exactly like this one. Kito suddenly studied him. Are you going to live with us now? Imani nearly dropped her cup. Tae-gyeom didn't laugh. No. Kito frowned. Why? Because your mother and I have things to understand first. Are you fighting? No. Tae-gyeom looked at Imani. I'm learning how not to rush things that matter. Kito nodded as though approving the answer. After breakfast, Mwikali took him to prepare dough in the kitchen. Imani placed the blue box on the table. There's one more letter. Tae-gyeom's smile disappeared. She removed a folded sheet. I wrote it the morning after Kito was born. I never sent it because I'd stopped believing anything would reach you. She handed it to him. Tae-gyeom unfolded the page. The writing was faded. Tae-gyeom, he arrived yesterday morning. He has your serious little frown and my stubbornness. I wish things were different because, despite everything, when they placed him in my arms, the first person I wanted to tell was you. I don't know whether I'll ever forgive you, but I hope one day I can remember loving you without remembering how much it hurt. Tae-gyeom stopped reading. Tears slipped down his face. He didn't hide them. You wanted me there. I did. And now, Imani looked through the window toward the bright harbor. Now I'm not the woman who wrote that letter. I know. I don't need rescuing. I know. And Kito doesn't need a billionaire. Tae-gyeom folded the letter carefully. Then it's fortunate I'm trying to become his father instead. She looked at him. What about us? He remained silent for several seconds. I loved who you were 7 years ago, but I don't know everything about the woman sitting here now. Imani hadn't expected that answer. So what are you saying? I'm saying I don't want our old relationship back. Her face fell slightly. Tae-gyeom continued. I want the chance to build a new one. 3 months later, Moravia's governance committee completed its investigation. Dong-hwan admitted authorizing the intercepted correspondence and permanently resigned from every company position. Hae-jin formally corrected the archived records. More importantly, Tae-gyeom publicly introduced new protections preventing any executive from privately controlling employee correspondence again. But his hardest work happened away from Moravia. Tuesday breakfasts became routine. Then Saturday walks. Then school pickups when Imani permitted them. Tae-gyeom never demanded that Kito call him Dad. One bright morning, Kito simply did. Dad, you're folding it wrong. Tae-gyeom's hands froze around a paper boat. Imani looked up from the bakery counter. Tae-gyeom swallowed before answering. Then teach me. 6 months after the firing, the 3 of them stood beside Busan Harbor, under clear morning sunlight. Kito launched a paper boat into a shallow fountain before running toward Sunok, who waited nearby. Tae-gyeom remained beside Imani. I owe you years, he said. You can't repay years. I know. She slipped her hand into his. but you can stop wasting the ones ahead. Tae-gyeom looked down at their joined hands. Is this forgiveness? No. Imani smiled. It's a beginning. He smiled too. And for the first time, neither of them needed the past rewritten. They only needed the truth acknowledged and tomorrow left open. Ahead of them, Kito shouted for his parents to hurry. This time, they went together. Some love stories aren't saved by forgetting what broke them. They're saved when two people finally become brave enough to build differently in the morning after. If Imani and Tae-gyeom's journey reminded you that truth can arrive late and still change everything, like this story, subscribe, share it with someone who believes second chances must be earned, and tell me in the comments, would you have given Tae-gyeom another chance?
What would you do if you discovered that the person you thought had betrayed you had actually been carrying the consequences of someone else's decision for years? Tae-gyeom believed he was protecting the future he had worked so hard to build, but in the end, he discovered that success had cost him something money could never replace: 6 precious years with his own son. And Imani's story reminds us that forgiveness does not mean pretending the pain never happened. She survived the loneliness, raised Kito with love, rebuilt her life, and when the truth finally came out, she didn't surrender her dignity simply because Tae-gyeom regretted the past. She made him understand that becoming a father required more than sharing blood. It required showing up, keeping promises, respecting boundaries, and choosing his child again and again. Maybe that is why Kito calling him dad meant so much more than any DNA result ever could. Tae-gyeom didn't demand that title. He earned it, and perhaps the most beautiful part of their story is that Imani didn't give Tae-gyeom the past back. She gave him something far more valuable: the opportunity to stop wasting their future. So now I want to hear from you. If you were Imani, after everything she endured, would you have given Tae-gyeom another chance? Or would the lost years have been too painful to forgive? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know what you would have done. And if this story kept you watching until this very moment, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes that sometimes love doesn't need a second chance at the old story. Sometimes it needs the courage to write a completely new one.